What's up, bodybuilding fans? Welcome to another episode of One on One with Jason. Our guest today is Homer Alafa, first natural pro bodybuilder here in the Valley, RGV. I known Homer for a good while when we first competed, in the late 99, 98, 2000s
Yeah,
area,
that's correct.
and he's been around for a good while. I mean, I was just checking 27 shows,
Yeah,
27 shows in his 23-year career, right?
yeah, about since 1997.
Wow, that's intense. That's a lot of shows. So I know him for a while, and he's not only that, you're out of so photo patrol.
Yeah,
He's been doing that for
a little over 23 years.
23 years. So I wanted to bring him on. He's one of the original ones down here in the valley. There's a couple handful that been in the bodybuilding since then and still in the bodybuilding community also. So welcome, Homer. To Texas Bodybuilding News.
Thanks, Jason.
So let's kind of start how it all began. Like how did you get into the bodybuilding? Like what was it that got you into bodybuilding? You know?
Well, bodybuilding, I grew up in Edinburgh. I grew up playing sports, played football, played basketball, baseball, ran track. So I was always competitive, always had a real supportive family as well. My sister was also athletic, and my younger sister was athletic. So it was something, I guess, embedded in us from our genetically from our parents. So I graduated from Edinburgh High School. After that, went 2 years, played football at a junior college, Navarro
Oh,
Junior College. And then I went to Western New Mexico, played football there. It's an NAI school in Silver City, New Mexico. And then I just lost a passion for football, and I realized, you know what, reality kicks in. You're not gonna make it to the NFL, so
what what
I
what, what position did you play?
in Edinburgh High I played running back,
Okay.
and then when I got to college, I played defensive back, a little bit of receiver. I would have learned to punt or kick if I had to, just to keep playing there. So it was pretty competitive, and that's why when you put that into like reality, like you can imagine the NCAA Division 1 schools, even Division 2 schools. If that was competitive, I can imagine those levels. So
And that was by scholarship or
it
you?
was a scholarship.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
that's interesting.
So yeah, it was great, but I realized, okay, well now I need to focus on another chapter in my life. What God's plan was for me at that point. So I came back, graduated from university. Back then it was Pan American. Uh, and I always enjoyed weight training ever since I was young. I remember my older sister, 5 years older, Marisa. She was athletic, big quads, big legs. I was like, well, why is my sister bigger than me? And so I started working out there. My dad had bought us like, the that weight set you would get at Walmart there. We had it at the house. I was always working out, always into that. So just got hooked on it. Me and some of the friends from the neighborhood would work out. And then growing up playing football and stuff, we would work out at the gyms there
So you had a good foundation of the training and weights.
yeah.
That's one thing that it's either two things. Either you get into after high school or you're really into it. I was out of high school then I got into it.
Yeah.
I know Joey also same thing. He was like more like during high school he was a sports athlete. I wasn't into sports. I
Yeah.
didn't. I was a small guy in high school, man. So. But yeah, so then you had like a little group of friends getting into to lifting with you at your house? Yeah, your house
Yeah,
like that?
back then, and then well, once I came back from college or whatever, I would go to the gyms. So what I remember vividly at that point was going to Bodybuilder's gym. I don't know if you remember
Yes, I
that
remember
gym.
23rd Street. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
23rd Street. And when I walked in there, I was like, oh wow, like got some big guys here. I remember back then, uh, seeing the first guy, the bodybuilder that I ever saw like in person. One of them was Aaron Garza. I don't know if you remember Aaron.
Yeah.
Looked like a cartoon character. I was like, wow, man, this guy's like really. He looked like a pro level bodybuilder to me. And then I met some good guys there that were encouraging and got to work out with them as well, like Julio Smith. I don't know if you know Julio
Yeah.
Smith, Ruben Ramirez,
I mean, it's, yeah.
Javi Rodriguez. He was a friend of Julio Smith back then, and they would tell me like I met Eric Perkins back around that time as well. Uh, phenomenal bodybuilder as well. As you know,
Some people might not know, but that was like the original OGs, man.
yeah,
You know, Ruben is still training. He has his own little gym. Eric Perkins, another guy that just got his pro card at 50.
yeah,
And then Aaron Garza, was one of the guys I looked up to too.
yeah.
And he's the one, the owner of Pure Line,
Hmm.
nutrition. Tony De La Garza too.
Yeah, Anthony De La Garza was one of the.
Those were the guys that we looked up to, and it was like the camaraderie, man, which is pretty cool back then.
Yeah, you also had Martin Guajardo. You remember Martin?
Yes, Martin.
The guy's still in shape. I see him at goals every once in a while.
Still around?
Yeah, he still like looks great, man. Just doesn't. He hasn't competed in a long time, but he's still sticking with it. Yeah.
And so then, how did you? So it was them kind of push you into.
Well, I remember like Julio and those guys would tell me, like you should think of competing. You have the frame. Of course, back then I didn't know anything about nutrition or whatever. To me, a post-workout meal was like a Whataburger and a Dr. Pepper back then. So I didn't know anything about it. So I was like, well, yeah, just give me a diet or whatever and I'll follow it. So I don't remember exactly who gave me the diet, but I remember back then it was like eat so much protein and cut your carbs out after 2 p.m. Don't eat any carbs. Like they made it seem like it was a sin back then. So I did that. And I'm not gonna lie. Well, prior to that, to leading up to that, they told me go and check out a show. I believe it was 1996. I went to see a show, the Fierro,
Uh-huh.
as a spectator. I'd never been a bodybuilding show, so I saw it and I was like, it looked interesting. Guys were chiseled. I mean, everyone looked phenomenal. I want to say that year might have been the year that either Nazar Savanetti was a guest poser or Ronnie Coleman and Vicky Gates were the guest poser. I get the years confused.
That was one of the original local bodybuilding shows.
Yeah, the Fierro Classic.
Fierro Classic. That was not sanctioned.
Yeah.
It wasn't a sanctioned show, but it was one of the popular ones that grew here in the Valley. Because I think, see, I don't remember when it started, but I remember it was because of the owner, right, of the fireman. That was
Yeah, he was the owner, and then in memory of him, his sister, and I want to say his brother-in-law started that show, and that's where it took off. I mean, it was the only one of the really shows known down here at that point. And at that point, I said, you know what? It piqued my interest, so I said I'll do it the next year. So I started the diet, and I was like a week into it. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. You don't realize how hard a diet is until you start because you're used to eating whatever you want. And of course, back then macros and all that stuff wasn't in.
We didn't even know none of this.
Yeah, it was just follow this, and like I told you, it was cut your carbs out after 2, and I was like. But after about 2 to 3 weeks, I started seeing the changes in my physique. And of course, back then you're not as educated in the bodybuilding realm or like as far as the background or as far as nutrition, training, all that. I was also doing like the Arnold Schwarzenegger workouts from the book. So I was like pretty much killing myself, man, as a natural competitor.
How old were you?
I was 23.
23. So
That was my first show at 23. And I'm not gonna say it was challenging, but I was going to school, so I was working at a gym that helped, and I was working there part time. Back then it was All American Gym. I remember my training partners were Manny Guerra, Marco Pulido. Yeah, Marco Pulido. Marco Pulido was like a teenager, looked like a man already, so he won the teen divisions during those times. And it was mainly us three. Once in a while, another friend of ours, Eric Webanos, would join us when he could. But yeah, I mean, we had some intense workouts. It was the Arnold Schwarzenegger workouts, 2 days. Of course, we didn't know any better, but it worked. I mean, I guess once you see the pics or whatever, you'll see like, wow, I went from, I believe I was like 200, 202. I went down to 172 and a half. And
you had a good frame when you first started?
When I started, I mean, I was an athlete. Graduating from high school, I weighed 172. Okay. So I had a pretty good frame. I mean, that's why I guess the guys at Bodybuilder's gym, like Julio Smith, Ruben Ramiro, all the guys were like, you have the frame, now let's see what happens after you incorporate a diet.
Yeah.
And that's where everything like fell into place. It was amazing what a diet did. And here you think spot reduction, sit ups, all that nonsense. You used to think back when you were a kid, like, I'll do 500 sit ups and looks the same. But
And how long did you prep for that show? You remember?
I want to say it was about 12, 15 weeks. Yeah, it's 12, 15 weeks.
And what struggles did you go through, man? No one like sticking with that. Cause back then we didn't have no cheat meals and
No, it was.
repeat. It was like you stick to the diet for your 12 weeks of the show, right?
Yeah, it was. I I guess what helped me keep with it was seeing the transformation in my physique. Because I'm like I said, like I mentioned earlier, that first week I was like, I don't know, if I can do this. But then after the second, third week, I could see the changes, and that motivated me to like, all right, well, let's see how far I can take this. And then I'd see the scale dropping. But of course, it's not all about the scale; it's how you look, right? So of course, back then they really wouldn't do much body fat checking or any of that stuff. We were using mainly the mirror, how everything looked from the back, from the front. My posing was pretty pathetic back then. Not that it's phenomenal now, but it was like you could tell. I mean, it
Who
was
helped you with posing?
look at this. The guys from the gym,
The
yeah. And then me and Marco would go over it there at All American Gym as well. And then yeah, but it was like I had no smile, no, because by that time, towards the end, I was like,
You're
I was just ready to eat. You're thinking like, man, what am I gonna eat after this? And then we went to that show. It was the South Padre Island show in 1997. I want to say it was sanctioned. I remember the guest posers were Dave Swander. He was another well-known bodybuilder down here. I remember seeing him. I was like, wow, man, he's and Trish Swander. I want to say
yeah.
she was all yeah. The
Swans.
Swanders were phenomenal, man. And then Betty Paricio was a guest poser. She was bigger than me.
That was just Ruben's show, no?
It might have been Ruben's show back
Ruben
then.
was a promoter for the
I want to say
Olympics,
you're correct.
'Cause I remember I did that show too. I did that show, I believe, 90, what was it? I don't remember the year, but it was the sixth annual one. I did that one. But yeah, that was an awesome show. That was the first NPC show down here.
Yeah.
So you did that one first, or you did the Fierro Classic?
No, I did that one
That one
first.
first.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it had to be Ruben coming. So hey, do my show. It
Yeah.
had to be.
Yeah, it probably was Ruben. Now he was very convincing. That's why I was like, and then they were telling me at that point, hey, it's not some of these guys are not. It's not a tested show. I was like, well, I didn't even know there was tested shows back then, or there was non-tested.
Yeah.
I really had not done my research. At that point, I was like, I don't care. Like I just wanted to do my best, see what happened. However it turned out, it turned out. It happened that through God's glory. I mean, I ended up winning the middleweight. At first, to me that was my first show, so it was like kind of awestruck because I was like, all these guys look big to me. I felt small, but I went up there with the middleweights. I weighed in at 172.5, and then I won the middleweight division. My friends were like, "Hey, you think you have the middleweight?" I was like, "I don't know, man. Those guys look pretty good to me." But then when we compared the video and all that, I was like, "Oh yeah." It's like, what, the heavyweight really looks big. So then I went up against the heavyweight, and I ended up winning the overall. And after that, I was hooked. I mean, I'm not gonna say after that show, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this again because of the dieting. But after I ate and got my senses back, I was like, you know what? I'll do that again. And then, of course, it was still using the old school type of dieting, cutting carbs out. I would lose a lot of muscle in the process, but I would get super lean to where that would carry me through the show at least. So I ended up doing, I believe, in '98 I did the Fierro Classic here locally, like you were saying, it wasn't sanctioned. And then I won the middleweight and the overall. And then also Tito Mata, Tito Mata out of Brownsville.
Show. I did that one too.
Yeah, I did that one in '98. I forgot what it was called, but it was like that was the first drug tested show I ever did actually. And funny story with that one is, I had never done a polygraph test, so they do a polygraph test, and then after the show they do a urinalysis. But I heard that everyone knows the Texas Shredder. If you're from Texas, you know who Dave Gooden is, the Texas Shredder. I remember they're like, there's a guest poser here, right? And they're like, oh, that's him over there. But he was enclosed. I mean, he was fully clothed. So I'm like, man, that's him. He doesn't look that big, I mean, I'm kind of as big as him. And then when we go up there and then he comes out to do his guest posing, like, oh my goodness, man, I have a long way to go, you know?
Dude, if you could get, if they call you Texas Shredder,
Yeah.
that's a name like, that's a
Yeah.
accomplishment itself,
Oh,
man. They
yeah.
call that guy, and he wasn't very big. He was over, I think, maybe like the 170, maybe
160s,
160. Yeah,
170s, but
he wasn't big, but he was shredded, a natural guy, shredded, shredded, shredded,
yeah, when
shredded.
you'd see him on stage, he
Yeah,
looked like a sculpted statue.
yeah.
I was like, that's when I was like, oh wow, man, that's so I need a lot of work, you know, but that's why he's a legend here in Texas. And later on, I went and did some other shows,
Just
drug tested, and I would do NPC back then. They weren't as strict as far as like if you did an NPC show. I remember Miles Stovall's also a natural pro that had won some middleweight. He was a world champ. He's also from Texas. Along the
is he from San Antonio?
Yeah, San Antonio.
Wow,
Yeah, he was like a gymnast. He would do
yes,
all these
yes.
awesome routines during his guest posing, and he was phenomenal as well. Him, Dave Gooden. Along the way, I met Charles Fuller. I don't know if you've ever met Charles Fuller.
Sure.
Guy, they call him Skeletor because he would get like he looked like Skeletor, man. I mean, he looked ridiculous. Uh, also, Mark Domi. I think he already retired a few years back. Also, Nick Del Toro, met him. I think he just recently competed in NPC. No, in a WNBF show, he got his pro card. He's one of the photographers, video guys for like gas and stuff
Okay.
like that. Real nice guy. I've met so many people along the way, back from bodybuilders, the natural organizations, even the not NPC. A lot of great competitors. NPC also had some drug tested shows as well. I would do the non tested shows as well, just to see how I just did it for fun. It wasn't for anything else. It was just like, for the
But you still
camaraderie.
did good, man. You did good in both organizations.
Yeah,
You know, you
yeah.
placed in the NPC club, man. You know.
Yeah, I would win here and there. I'd win the middleweight and the overall on some NPC shows.
Yeah. So your overall career, you had 10 overalls. You did 12 NPC shows, two NGAs. You got your pro card in NGA. Then you got a INBF. You got a pro card there. You did a Muscle Mania, INBF, NFF, and then you did a couple pro shows. So let's talk about what made you decide to stay natural doing both organizations. You know, when was the decision for you to say, you know what, I'm gonna stay in this natural route. You know,
Yeah, I guess back then, you know, uh, growing up throughout high school, I really always did my own. I don't know. I kind of even like when me and my friends would go out drinking. They'd go out drinking. I was always the designated driver. I never really. I always and I always told my parents like I'm gonna stick to this path. And when they saw that I was getting so much into the bodybuilding, they were like, hey, well, my dad had to talk to me. Hey, just be careful, And even when I left to college, of course, you would see some of the college guys using enhancements, and I just never. I don't know. It was something God instilled in me at that point for some reason, and not that I have friends that are enhanced, and we all get along. It's a matter of choice, and I don't know why I just kind of stuck with it at that point, and then I realized I was going to go into law enforcement. So I was like, well, if it's not prescribed, or, I knew there was, if they do a polygraph test, of course, there were so many things in, in my mind during that time that, okay, well, if I do that, I mean, I can't really get this route or go this way. And then I just want to see how far I could take it naturally. And I've just stuck to it
stick
then.
to it.
Yeah.
And you said because you were going a lot more. So where did you get into Border Patrol right away, or you got into something else before?
Right before, I mean, during that time, I thought I was going to become a coach and a teacher. But I said, I'll give law enforcement a try. So I did my internship at McAllen PD.
Okay.
I got, I thought, I'll try this out. So I got in with them back in about 97,
Well, you graduated with what? What degree did you go?
criminal justice.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
already had criminal justice. Okay.
Yeah. So I applied with them and then Border Patrol Customs at that time. And then I went with McAllen PD. I was going through their academy, met some great people there as well. And then Border Patrol contacted me and offered me Harlingen, Texas. So I went to their
Where
academy.
was that?
That was I went to that academy in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was about a 5-month academy. 5-month long academy and came back to Harlingen, and that's allowed me to stay down here, close to my family.
What year was that?
Oh, that was 99 actually.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was like when you were getting into the bodybuilding.
Yeah, well, that's why I went real strong. 97, 98. There's a convenience of working at a gym and having that time. So I got in at 99 Border Patrol. So you go to shift work, there's more responsibilities. Of course, at that time I didn't have a family or any children. So at that point, I mean, I focused more on my career, of course, right? I wanted to make sure I had it down, and I didn't want to get in trouble or anything like that. I didn't want to be late, or I just wanted to follow everything to the T what they wanted me to were expecting from me.
But you continued doing bodybuilding shows.
Yeah, I went back 2000. I did a show that was the Cornerstone back then. I want to say I got second in the middleweight in that one. That one wasn't tested. I just wanted to get kind of back into it because it would keep me on a diet and
Well, because NPC, first Cornerstone started their show, and it got real because everybody from Cornerstone that would hang out, and they got convinced. I don't know how they convinced it or who started it, but then that's when they made a show.
yeah,
I don't know if it was Tony, Bernadette, all of them, and coming up, but they made a show, and it got so big
yeah,
and popular that then that's when they got sanctioned.
yeah.
The
The
following
NPC,
year.
yeah.
Yeah, and I did that one too. So that was the following year. That was 2000, right? When they became sanctioned.
Yeah, I want to say I want to say you're correct there.
And you won what, the middleweight there?
No, I came in second that
Okay.
year to Mark C. Fuentes. He looked good. It was close, but he looked good. Actually, I lost to Anthony Del Garza back at the second Fierro Classic I did. But yeah, but Anthony's been in it, yeah, for a while, man, and he's a beast,
I
man.
remember when I was young, when I was starting off, when I was seeing them, I really thought that Tony would be turning pro one time.
Yeah,
Or even Anthony. I mean, Aaron. Because those guys
Aaron,
are just
yeah.
huge,
Well, I think
man.
Aaron, and then you had later on in the picture, Ron Torres came into the picture. I think he was like 2 or 3 slots away from getting his pro card as well.
Yeah.
There was guys right there, man. But you see their physiques, and you're like, man, I mean,
Yeah, I competed with Ronald over there at North Americans.
oh yeah,
Yeah, but I knew who the guy was, and then I met him at Pittsburgh when we did the North Americans, and we competed against each other.
Yeah.
And that's where I got my pro card.
oh
at the
yeah.
North Americans. But yeah, he was one of the top guys out here too.
And then and then a little bit later, Mike Johnson came into the picture.
Johnson.
VPR gym there in McAllen.
He's still trying, right?
No, yeah, he's done some national level shows. He's done really well. He looks great all the time, But of course, he has to juggle family, work. He's also a teacher, and I want to say he used to coach, but now he has a gym. So I think he just teaches and has a gym. So he's a real nice guy, real great friend. But that's the amazing thing with like down here, we know who's in the. There's of course nowadays a lot of new faces that I don't know them that well, but I still support them on social media and stuff like liking them, congratulating them.
But back then it was that camaraderie.
Yeah.
It was like that's what I was saying in the other broadcast. It's like back then, we all helped each other somehow.
Yeah,
Gave advice or support each other and stuff like that. The camaraderie. It was like you was picture like the gold chip.
Yeah.
Where everybody bodybuilders were at the same gym, where everybody was training, everybody was there giving advice, and it was cool.
yeah,
And then you would look up to them, and then they'll give you tips and stuff like that. But you brought a good point, and the juggling. How because that's one thing most people always say, like, "Oh, I just don't have the time," or "My job doesn't let me," and I got a family. I know you said you didn't have kids when you first started, but I
No.
mean, you got married and you had kids.
Yeah.
And you still been in bodybuilding shows, and you're with the Border Patrol, your career. So how did you manage all that time to keep competing?
Yeah, well, my wife, I met her 2004, my wife Alicia. So we dated for about 5 years. Then we got married in 2009, of course. And then I had an instant family right away. My older daughter, Alyssa, at that time she was 3, and then she's 20 now. And then she knew I competed in the past. That you're talking 2009, so I had not competed at that point since 2003 was the last show I had done. So
you had like a little break.
Yeah, I had a break. Well, actually, she did see me in 2008 compete. That was the first time going into the.
Okay.
That's when she stuck through me with that. I said, "Oh, she's a keeper," like she saw that before we got married.
Support. Okay.
Yeah, at first she was
that
like,
helps. That helps.
"Oh, it helped." Yeah, that's why I was like, she supports me. She's always been there for me. And at first she was a little like, "Oh, I don't know, it's kind of weird stuff." She had never been around it. But then she was like my wife, my manager, my best friend. Put the tanning stuff on me. Like the pro. Well, back then it was pro tan. Then we moved on to Jantana, liquid sun rays. But she would put it all on me, the oil, all that stuff, and help me with my meals, all that stuff. Like so, that 2008 when I finally hired a coach.
Then yeah, let's go back. So then all the other shows prior to that, you did it all on your own.
I did on my own, or I remember, like, if anyone has heard of Beverly International, it's a supplement company.
Yeah. Yes.
Beverly International, they have like these diet plans on their website. So I would go in there and do like their leanest cut, and I'd take the supplements, and it would pull me through some shows, man. I just followed
Did you actually use their stuff?
Yeah. I used their stuff since starting like 2001. And on and off, but more on than off. Recently, I started using core nutritional supplements as well.
That was my was that the guy from that does the NPC Prince, no?
The core nutritional
from the Beverly.
No, he used to use it back in the day. But I don't know. Prince Fontaine?
Because I remember you would get that little book.
Yeah.
And they'll have the supplements and all that stuff, and it was real popular.
Yeah, it was back then. There's still.
I know they're still around. It's just like that was. I remember them. They were very popular back then.
So I would use some of those, like it was like I do it for like 12, 15 weeks and diet. And then in 2008, I remember I would go through. Back then, there was a natural magazine, the Natural Bodybuilding magazine.
Yeah.
And there was this coach that would come out, Dr. Joe Klemeshki.
Okay.
So I would see some of the guys that were like, oh, they worked with him, and I was like, man, they look phenomenal. So like, they're natural. I was like, I don't know, man, but they were, because in the picture they looked like 200 pounds, but in reality they weigh like 170, 180. So finally told my girlfriend back then, but now my wife Alicia, I said, you know what, I'm gonna hire this coach, see what happens. So contacted him, worked with him, got a plan going, and it was macros based. I had never done macros, but I was like, well, back then there weren't all these MyFitnessPal, or there were all these apps weren't around, so I had to put on an Excel sheet everything I ate, what it tallied up to, protein, macronutrients, carbs, and fat. And
so he would just tell you the macros, and you would just figure it out.
Yeah,
the rest?
Yeah. He would tell me, and as long as it fit within that range, I would follow it to the T, and then send it back to him. And then it was a longer diet. It was probably about over 20 weeks, but doing that meant that I realized I held on to my muscle a lot better as a natural competitor, right? I was like, wow, man. At first, I was like, I don't know about this. I would tell my wife, or my girlfriend back then, and now my wife. I don't know, but I already paid, I hired him, so I'm just going to follow it. And then sure enough, it worked out perfectly. 2008, I got 2 pro cards in the natural ranks, WNBF and GA. And then I won 2 or 3. The other one was an INBA show. I also won that overall. Every show I did that year, and I did 2 NPC shows. I won the middleweight and the overall in every show.
Was this something that you wanted to pursue on the natural organization to try to see if you can get your pro card? Or
yeah.
So you thought about it already?
Yeah, it was, you set goals, and that was my main goal, just getting a pro card, right? And then after that, I was like, okay, well, I got my pro card. 2009, I told my wife, she was already my wife, we were leading up to getting married, but I told her, you know what, I want to go and do a WNBF pro show. We went to Indiana. It was a reality check, it was like,
Okay. So you went 2008.
Yeah.
You did, what was it?
Uh,
IN,
INBF. I got my
INBF,
pro card with the
and
WNBF.
for bodybuilding.
Yes.
Okay. And then so you got your pro card there.
NGA.
So when you get your pro card, then you can go and compete with WNBF.
Yes.
Okay. So then that was the WBF the following year.
The following year in
Okay.
Indiana, because they didn't have any pro shows. There really weren't pro shows in Texas during that time. Natural.
Well, one thing that kind of struck me was that they even had classes
What is it?
because the weight classes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's not like in our pro show. It's
Well,
just one weight class.
Sometimes depending, yeah, certain organizations did have either a it was either heavyweight or lightweight, and then some, like in that one, I think there was just heavyweight and lightweight. That first pro show I did, and
Yeah, because even Joey, when he did his pro show, he was telling me that they had classes.
yeah,
And I was kind of, oh, that's weird because like it was NPC, you're a pro. Because back then they didn't have the 202 or 212.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was open. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to go, you would have to be just compete as a
yeah,
pro.
that's true.
Then they started having the weight classes. So then you did that one. Where was it at?
In Indiana,
And it was and they put you in the what, middle
I ended up
Over.
by a few pounds in the heavyweight. Yeah.
over. So you
Yeah.
the big boys.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't even remember what I placed. I think there was like 11 or 12 of us. I got like 8th or 9th.
Because they were good. So what was the cutoff?
I don't remember. I want to say it was like maybe 175, 174, 175
Up.
and up.
So you were right in the bottom of the.
Yeah, I was at the bottom. And Sean Clarita was actually in that show.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's
But he was a lightweight.
He was a natural.
Yeah, he was a
too.
natural
Yeah.
competitor. He did really well. I mean, he got second, but the guy that beat him, no one saw him coming. Francisco Montealegre. He used to live in Texas. It was close, but I mean, Francisco had a little more muscle on because you ever Sean Clarita?
Sounds like
Yeah,
he's
on
a-
stage he looks like a monster, but
Yeah.
he's actually like 5'2", I believe.
Okay, and that was 2008, and you got your pro card, and then 2009. But you did also, but you did an IMBF pro show too, right?
That was the WNBF because the INBF
okay,
is the amateur.
So you got your pro card, the NGA,
Uh-huh.
and then you got your pro card in the IMBF. Okay,
Yeah.
and then you did that one, the problem here, and then
Uh,
after that, what you decided to go back to NPC for a while. Did a couple of
yeah, I
shows.
did some NPC shows here in Texas. 2010 I did one. I think I got third at it was a Texas Shredder, I want to say, or it was either the Shredder, it was a Dave Gooden show
Mhm.
that he promoted. And then I went back the following year and I got first in the middleweight and lost the overall to the heavyweight. That one was a drug tested show.
Yeah.
Then I took I think a 2-year hiatus, a break, and then 2013 I came back and I did was it the Iron House?
Iron House.
Iron House. I won the middleweight and the overall there. I did the Muscle Mania. I won the middleweight there. Well, initially at that show they had called me out for third place, and I was kind of like, okay, well, just it's a subjective sport, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I respected their decision, but then they called me later that I actually got in first. Of course, I didn't get to go for the overall at that show, but they had invited me to go to a Muscle Mania show in Florida. But during that time, we already had my younger daughter, Elena, so we had already plans. So at that time, of course, I was like, well, the last show I had scheduled for that year was the Texas State Naturals, I remember. And I think I got third there. That was a tough division. That was a middleweight. I remember David Lovelace won that middleweight division, and the heavyweight ended up winning the overall.
Because I remember back then, I mean, there was a couple natural shows that NBC do.
Yeah.
And then because back then the Team Universe was, a natural or tested event.
Yeah.
So how would, I mean, I know you said you have a supportive wife, but what else helped you juggle bodybuilding and your job,
Well, one thing, it was just, I guess, setting the goal and then knowing, okay, well, I'm being a little too complacent with my diet, and then I would tell my wife. Sometimes she was happy. I would jump back on my diet because I'd be eating whatever I wanted. Be up to about 205, 210. Usually I compete to look good, like really lean and ripped. I'm in between 170, 175. So I knew I had to lose 25, 30 some pounds. But after I did the macro tight diet, I was like, well, man, I mean, that's the one where I think I held on more to my muscle instead of sacrificing along the process.
Yeah.
It was a little longer. And, but I think it was, and the support from my brothers and sisters in the border patrol, back then. I mean, a lot of my, coworkers would be like, some of the supervisors would be like, hey, well, no, you need those days off to compete. We'll
But
cover you.
how about the eating and stuff like that? Like, how did you?
Oh, I had to adjust. Like if I was on midnights, my breakfast would be right before I went into work at 10 at night, and I would eat my meals throughout the course of the the shift, right? And then I'd get out in the morning and work out about 9:30, 10 in the morning,
The main thing is
adjusting.
you adjusted it.
Yeah.
You got it done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like most people will say, well, it's hard, or I can't do it, or my schedule, and once you start doing all these excuses, I mean, it is what it is. Excuses.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, we all know that at times bodybuilding, especially if you have a family, you have to have that support.
Yeah.
And that's what helped me. I mean, my wife's support, my kids' support, my parents' support, and because it is kind of a selfish sport. It is a selfish sport. It is because you're dieting. You only eat certain things. You have to train. You have to do your cardio. It's especially if you're very meticulous of the way you like doing things and you want to do it 100%. You have to be disciplined. But of course, other things in your life are going to be sacrificed. So that was one thing I did realize. So that's why I think I would take those breaks because I needed them for my family and to reassess and for us to have, some good time with one another. And I like to eat too, So I like eating pizza and stuff like that.
So like when you're not on like a prep, how do you adjust? Trying to go back to normal, or do you still kind of eat certain plan, or how do you do it?
I kind of I try to eat pretty good, especially when I'm at work. And I'm still kind of doing more of a macro type diet, but am I super strict? No. But once we've been doing it for so long, you know your body, right? So like, okay, well, I'm gaining a little too much body fat. So you adjust,
Yeah.
you adjust your calories, you adjust your cardio. Your training is pretty much that's not really going to affect. A lot of people have that misconception. Well, the way you train is going to reduce beta. No, that's just to break down the muscle tissue, and then of course you're going to grow when your nutrition, your rest, all that. I didn't know. Of course, now we know about all those factors: your sleep, your rest, your nutrition. It's all important, and you can't overdo your cardio either, unless you're prepping and you're like trying to get to a certain point. But off season, you don't really want to.
Have you gotten any injuries or anything like that?
Nah, little strains here and there. I mean, either doing a movement wrong, but just strains, like little muscle strains. But I just work around it, and I'm back to normal. I haven't.
But no tears.
Thankful to God, no tears, nothing
Yeah, I'm the
major.
same way. I was like, that's one thing I always, like, 'cause has your changed of style of training changed throughout the years?
It has. As you get older, you get wiser.
Yeah.
You gain more knowledge, and especially after working with the Dr. Joe Plemeshki, he had put me on some workout programs. Recently, these past years, I worked with Cliff Wilson. He works with a lot of. I think his clientele is probably about 85% natural, and then the others enhanced. So he works with both. But if you look him up, Cliff Wilson, phenomenal coach. You see his list of competitors. I mean, they're shredded, man. And when he competed back in the day, I don't know if he's ever going to compete again, but he's about 6 feet, 6'1", weighed in about 168, 169, but just peeled. So he also does a macronutrient base. So I still work with him on and off, especially when I'm competing. I also got an opportunity to work with Brian Hoydick. a little for a while on my off-season diet. He's also, great coach. If you look at his record, he has a lot of the more of the NPC guys, but he's out of Ohio, I believe, and Cliff Wilson is out of Chicago. Or
So you've had about three
three
or
throughout
three
my
coaches,
whole day.
and from their coaching styles, have you seen kind of the same, kind of almost the same? Is there something that totally different from when you went to different coach?
Well, Dr. Joe Klemeszki and Cliff Wilson, similar kind of diets. Not. I mean, but they're macro based. But of course, they adjust accordingly. They have their own way of doing it, adjusting cardio. The weight training programs are different, but kind of the same concept to a certain degree. Brian Hoydick, I mean, his workouts were a little more higher volume. Higher volume. They were all intense, actually, but when I was working with Brian Hoydick, it was more of an off-season diet. I did it maybe I used them for one peak and then used them off season. I think I was up to like 212. Then I was like, I just didn't feel comfortable for my frame.
Yeah.
And then we kind of tapered it down. But a great coach as well. But his was more like he would tell you what to eat, the amount of foods.
Okay.
So
Well,
he would send
mostly
you.
that's what most people do. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's what I'm used to.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I calculate macros, but I'm like, I think that for me and for my clientele, it's just it's based better. It'd be like, look, just eat this, eat this,
Mhm.
eat this, because I think when you do macros and if someone's not familiar,
Yeah.
they can go a little crazy with that because it's like, well, it fits my macros, it fits my macros, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But their carb sources can be other stuff, or they're not getting the right protein because they're getting it from somewhere else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's kind of off, you know. But
Yeah.
if you understand it, then you know what to get the sources from.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Like they were pretty specific when the macros, of course, working with Dr. Joe Klemeszki back in 2008. I really got familiar with it. At first, I was oblivious to it, but after utilizing those Excel sheets and having to send them into him, I got real familiar. Me and my wife both did.
And what would you get it from? Like from the label itself, like the food
Like
label?
yeah, the food label, but he would, of course, they would also recommend a certain amount of fiber.
No, what
Yeah.
I'm saying is like 'cause we didn't have the apps, like you said.
Oh yeah,
So you didn't know how to. In a fitness
yeah,
app, you put the meal or you scan it, and they'll tell you
yeah,
everything.
exactly.
So back then we didn't.
You
have
had to
so
look
like
at the
you
label
look
and
at
then
the
like
label and write
yeah.
enough. Okay,
So
you're
I
old
would
school label.
yeah.
Yeah.
For me, even now, it's easier unless you're on like a growth season or off season. It's easier for me to do it. Once I had a certain amount of foods and I knew their macros, I would kind of stick to those foods. And they were pretty good about. They would tell you, well, it has to be low glycemic to middle index glycemic carbohydrates to utilize those more. Unless it was post workout, then you could go a little more higher glycemic. Uh, so they were real good. I mean they've been doing it for so long, and I mean, like I said, if you look at any other Dr. Joe Klemeszki and Cliff Wilson, and even Brian Hoydick, even though Brian Hoydick does more of like your style, you look at their competitors and they're all like they all look great, man. So I always look at that. Like I look at that
The
for
track
their
record.
competitors. Yeah, their track record. You have to, and that's one thing I always would look at. And I mean, both concepts work. It's just a matter, and it's also the relationship between a coach and a client. Like, do they match up well? As far as because there has to be like some kind of bond or some kind of understanding or respect there. And I mean, I've gotten along with all of them, so I have nothing bad to say about any of them.
If you guys are interested in some great supplements, link is in description. Jack Factory, check them out. Good line of good quality supplements. Use my code Jason, get 15% off the products. If there's some products you're trying to, you want to know more about, direct message me, hit me up, tell you which ones are good, for your goals and stuff like that. So go check it out.